What's up, everybody? Thralls of Metal here. I'm Jammin John.
Necrotic Nick.
And we are bringing you, guess what? Another album review. And today, we are going to go over a band that I'm familiar with because we went over them before. So I'll let everybody take a minute and ooh and ah. Okay, so today we are going to go over the newest offering from Vacuous, In His Blood. This record also comes out on the 28th of February on Relapse Records. This is their second full length. We went over their last one, Dreams of Dysphoria, back in 2022. Band features members of bands like Thundering Hooves, which I don't know if I've ever heard of, Medicinal Rites, and Bastard Mycosis. For those of you that don't know, this is pretty greasy, filthy, grimy death metal.
Yeah, and I mean, it's different than the first one, for sure. Like, there's a notable change here. While death metal is definitely at the core of this band's sound, there's more going on here, and it's only made this band heavier, which I'm not even saying the first one's not heavy. It most definitely is, but this is a lot heavier than the first one.
Absolutely ferocious, vicious, and gnarly. Recorded at Holy Mountain Studios by a guy I've never even heard of, Stanley Gravitt. Sounds a lot like either Kurt Ballou or Arthur Risk. We were volleying between the two, so if you know what those two things sound like, this is definitely what that record sounds like.
It has elements of both. Like, as soon as I heard the guitars, they have this crispy, sludgy, almost HM2 sort of like sizzle to it, but at the same time, there's a lot of like lush atmosphere, and yeah, it has a mix of both of those producers, and my God, is it punishing. Like, this thing sounds even more dense than before, but with the atmosphere around it, which is unsettling as hell. It's almost like some giant beast cloaked in fog. Like, you can see it moving around in the mist, and you don't want to get anywhere near it because it's going to reach out of the fog and tear your throat out.
Yes, it's got that sound and that vibe to the entire record.
Right from the rip, with the opening track, the title track, the atmosphere is kind of set because you get a turnover, and then what sounds like the rest of the band pushing the singer off of a fucking cliff. And then you get these dissonant, swarming, chaotic riffs and these ghostly lead melodies, which these lead melodies are all over here, and they're all tuneful, but they all sound very unpleasant and distressed.
Yep.
And there's like a nervous energy on here with all the transitions and hardcore breakdowns and then these atmospheric spots. This is a dark, brooding listen. Like, when you get down to a song like Hunger, one side is atmospheric and dense and just kind of haunting sounding. There's like this repeated like sample that keeps playing. Like, it sounds like dialogue from probably a really creepy movie. And then it transitions into just bone-crunching, bludgeoning, heavy riffs, nasty grooves, and it kind of goes back and forth between that. Neither one of them offering any sort of comfort at all.
As a matter of fact, everything is so dense and so just like menacing, it sounds disorienting, and like just the whole time you're just kind of like, ugh. And most everything is just gnarly sounding. The track Flesh Parade, in particular, bendy, gnarly harmonies. It's got a real slow build to it. And again, these spoken word samples, and they're not really loud enough so you can hear what they're saying. It sounds more like mumbling in the distance. Like I don't know if you've ever taken mushrooms, but if you have, sometimes there are voices.
Sometimes Satan will mumble in your ear.
Yeah. And that's kind of what it sounds like. Every time there's spoken word, it's not really audible, but at the same time it's there. It just adds a kind of a layer to this already disturbing atmosphere.
Everything vocally is kind of in the back of the mix, and honestly, it makes it sound more creepy. And that includes, again, the vocals. The vocals on here alternate between like desperate howling, low cavernous roars, and then these like elongated groans. Immersion in particular, there's this kind of like ghastly, almost kind of wheezed groan that is the vocal take for most of it, and honestly, it's very disturbing. Like, it sounds very dry-throated, but all that contributes to the atmosphere. And when this thing isn't just hitting you over the head with like cinder block size riffs, it is generating these moments of just dissonance and just pure like unsettling, unnerving atmosphere. Like, take like all the slow breakdowns you hear on an incantation album, and then add someone screaming in the background and even more dissonance if that's at all possible.
I definitely got my dissonance fix for the day. Thank you to this band. I'm just gonna kind of revel in this for a moment. I was afraid I wasn't going to get my full dissonance for the day, and I got it, so I'm very happy about that. And the guitar tone, while it's heavy, it also has this kind of sizzle and static that's over top of it at all times. And it makes it feel like every time they get really dissonant and chuggy, it feels like there's something crawling across your shoulder.
And that really stands out in the sludgy, slower, more brooding moments. Public Humiliation in particular. That song is an absolute bruiser with the dark melodies. You get the scathing feedback that starts it off. It's more slow and menacing than other tracks, but it does eventually ramp up the energy. You get into like some just big-ass blast beats, which blast beats are used intermittently on here, but this song is about kind of elongating the atmosphere. Very distant, very ugly. And kind of like the first album, there's this like, almost kind of like cold but damp atmosphere, except this one, it's not like just raining or misting on you. It's literally dropping ice boulders on your skull. The whole vibe of, well, I mean, this album in general, but this song, Public Humiliation, is just disgusting. Like, it's one of the filthiest songs on here. And this is one where I would say they incorporated some elements of like sludge metal in general. Like, you know, a little bit of like I Hate God, or God, I would even say a band like Rewake, or however you say that.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be going over them next month. I figured might as well throw them in there because there's some comparable stuff here.
Yeah, if anything, that song for the most part is just lurching. Just lurching, slow, brooding. Like, it takes its time to get there. You don't go full bore. You don't get into blast right away. It's like this slow climb up a hill, and it just, I love that feeling of that song. It just kind of drags you down under.
And this song isn't without melody, I would say. Like, I mean, the melodies are, again, unnerving and dark, but occasionally I would say they're a little bit on the catchier side, like Contraband. Contraband almost sounds like a sludge band covering early Catatonia. Like, they listened to Brave Murder Day, and they're like, we can do that, except we're going to do it our way. But again, it's not melodic in the sense like, oh, that's really pretty. It's dark. It's unsettling. It's a very tortured and anguished song. But it adds like yet another layer to this album that I don't think really showed up on the first one. Same thing with No Longer Human, the giant, chuggy, nasty closer. The opening of that one with the feedback and this like just stomping groove, like I feel like I was listening to the beginning of like the heaviest Helmet song ever, which is interesting because that made me think of the album cover. The album cover for the last one, unmistakably death metal. You look at it, you know, you got the scraggly tree branch logo, and it's just kind of dark and tangled looking. This one, you have a picture, which is kind of hard to make out what it is. I know someone in the comments was kind of guessing what it was. It might be like the inside of a morgue incinerator, which is pretty fucking metal. But also, with the block letters on there, the first thing I thought of was like, dude, you could just clear out the logo for Vacuous and just put an Unsane logo on there. And because it looks like it's already splattered in blood, well, it already works as an Unsane album.
Or if the cover was green, it would have been a Typo World Coming Down cover.
Yeah.
That's kind of how the setup is. You get the band logo on the top and the album title on the bottom, and it's just kind of weird. I wouldn't have guessed that this record is as heavy as it is based on the cover.
No kidding. Like, I mean, this kind of has like a 90s, like, you know, heavy but not necessarily metal vibe in terms of the album art. But when you play it, it's ungodly heavy. Like, honestly, this might be up there with one of the heaviest listens I've had this year, not only in production and tone, but just the vibe on here. The vibe is so dark. Like, this whole album screams, don't come near me. I've had a bad day, week, year, whatever it is.
Life. I
will hurt you. And it won't be your fault, but it's going to happen. Like, this kind of like packs like the atmosphere of like a Godflesh album, but stylistically, like, there's a lot more comparable to bands like Mole, Sybaris, Creeping Death, and Obscene, especially in terms of the vocals. Like, just the vocals being extra haunting and kind of ghoulish at times. Yeah.
I even thought there were a couple blackened moments in here, and maybe, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about yet. Moments in songs like Hunger, some of the riffing actually reminded me, like, when they get into a real tremolo heavy section, and the vocals that came in on top of that were more of like an icy cold scream, and that just kind of reminded me of a blackened moment. And then also on the last track, No Longer Human, again, some blackened screams. Once again, maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, but I think I heard it.
Honestly, this is like more blended in comparison to like their first album. It's got elements that have been kind of like woven in their sound, but not to the point where you'd say like, oh no, they're a sludge metal band now. Oh, they're black and death metal. Oh, they're metal and hardcore combined. These elements are definitely here, but this is still 100% death metal.
As far as any negatives were concerned, I didn't really have any until I got to the song Contraband. For me, personally, that song I just felt to be kind of odd, at least through like 3/4 of the song. By the end of the song, it seemed like it fit more in with the rest of the music that's on the album, but the first half of it, I didn't really get a whole lot out of, because there's not really much by way of riffing. Like, it's a lot of atmospheric noise and drums, and then just kind of like, you get kind of like, I don't want to say whispered vocals, but he's definitely not growling at that point. It just, to me, it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb.
To me, it kind of sounded like a much more raw version of what Gatecreeper tried to do with the last album. Like, be a little bit more melodic, but also be heavy. But this band also said, nah, we want dissonance, and we want, people to feel really, really uncomfortable while listening to it. I did have some issues with the song Immersion. That song is just odd. Like, it has like kind of like a more punky sort of vibe to it at times. Like, you get the big downpick riffs. There's even some tremolos in there, like a double time D beat in there, but the riffs on it, like in terms of like how the melodies line up, they're very atonal. Plus you have this, again, very odd groaned vocal take on it. I mean, much like every other song in here, it's still a bruiser. It's still unsettling. It just doesn't really gel very well. Like, I do love the breakdown at the end. The breakdown at the end is absolutely savage, but like the song overall didn't grab me as much, but the album did. In fact, I see this as a really cool transition for this band, because this feels more distinct. Where their first album, a lot of bands that kind of sounded like what they were doing, like, Blood Incantation, Tomb Mold, and, Mortiferum, like tons of bands. This one stands out because it's got a blend of different elements, and man, I don't think this band left much on the table as far as like trying to make this as heavy as hell. It still has its old school death metal charm to it, but there's a lot more just gristle and just filth on this. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. I like this. It's a dark listen. Man, like, you kind of feel the anguish behind this one. It's punishing as hell in certain parts. Like, I mean, like the breakdowns hit hard, the grooves hit hard. Like, all those traditional death metal elements, they're nasty. But it's the extra stuff they do on here that really makes this stand out. Public Humiliation, probably one of my big standouts. I loved Stress Positions too. No Longer Human, the closer. It's when they kind of step outside of just like the straightforward death metal mold and do some, extra atmospheric or just like, a different kind of heavy. That's where this album gets really strong. Even the weaker tracks in here, I didn't think were necessarily that weak, but I do like the fact that this band is experimenting, showing some different, styles, getting kind of blended in their overall sound. And they're a young band too. Like, this is on their second album, and I think they've made a really solid improvement here. So yeah, if you're a big fan of, again, I would say like Maul and Obscene, and again, like, I get vibes like Incantation and Godflesh in there too. I don't know, just like dark, heavy shit, and to not feel good listening to music, this album should put off that vibe.
I'm going to have to agree and also give this 4 stars. I mean, first of all, right off the bat, I got my dissonance fix. I'm happy about that. This record is vicious. It is absolutely filthy, jam-packed full of just gnarly sounding riffs, and the atmosphere is just blech. It's crazy. Very evil sounding record, very dark. There's a whole lot more going on here than just traditional old school death metal. And I think part of that comes into play with all the atmosphere that's on this record. It sounds like, much like Nick said, like there's some weird, creepy, giant animal lurking in the fog and you don't really want to go in there. And if you gotta look at the monster, it would probably eat your soul, and I don't think you want that either. The darkness in the album reminds me of venturing off in the woods. There's no electricity, there's no people, and then you drive up to the cabin that's an Evil Dead, and you're like, I don't know what we're doing here, but I'm gonna go inside anyway, and then whatever the hell's in there eats you. It's kind of like that.
It's the Hound of the Baskervilles.
Yeah.
Except it's on crack.
Yeah. The record sounds crusty and filthy, snarling guitars, snarling bass, big punchy drums. Everything sounds hostile and gross and agonized, and this is all the things I like about death metal. If you're into bands like Surely Obscene, and it's mostly because of the vocals, and you'll get it, Yautja, Teeth, Maul, Morbid Angel, Siverus, stuff like that, you're probably really going to dig this. This is this band evolving, so if you like the last record, you're definitely going to want to check out this one.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and we offer a members-only live stream, which is generally pretty fun and can kind of go just about anywhere. You'll find out. We're probably due for another one here really soon. Anyway, memberships are the main way to support the channel. We also have our store, thrallsmetal.com, with our t-shirts and hats. That is linked down below in the video description. And, of course, if you would like to become a member, there is a join button somewhere down below.
And if you hit it, that'll be cool. And if you don't hit it, it'll be cool. Because we just appreciate you anyway. Thank you for being here, for being a part of this channel. Of course, tons of content coming from us. Album reviews, discography rankings, never-ending discussion forums, never-ending segments, states of metal, is it metal, is it not metal, Nick's never-ending collection updates, stuff coming from my camp eventually. I promise you guys, life has been super fucking chaotic lately. But it doesn't take away from the fact that we appreciate the fact that you are here. Again, thank you for being a part of this channel. Thank you for all that you guys do for us. It means the world to us. Nick, tell them more.
Yeah, you guys absolutely roll. Tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.